into the unknown, into the unseen, the unexplainable, and the unbelievable. Join our strange journeys. Are you ready?
So that's kind of neat. But as we move forward, one of the things that we are working on is in doing so taking multiple photos around headstones and using what's called photogrammetry to take multiple pictures. And as you can see here off on the right, all of these pictures are kind of tied together, and they create a three-dimensional mesh of the headstone, which that can then be cleaned up and made into a three-dimensional model of that headstone that would include all of the details as if you were standing there in front of the headstone. However, it's a three-dimensional object, so that you could load that up on your computer and go all the way around that to view all the different angles and to get all of the details and elements on that headstone. So it's just a new way of easily preserving like your ancestors' headstones from all angles, not just that one angle you're used to seeing.
Is that one of the original Daleks, or is that a beehive on the top of it?
That is a beehive, and it actually stands for the Ladies of the Maccabees, which was another secret society, just like the the Order of Odd Fellows and things like that. So that was the Lady of Maccabees. So it's a very ornate headstone. And for the life of me, I cannot remember who's on there.
She was asking if it was a Dalek.
Yeah, what? I don't know if you're Doctor Who fans, but it kind of reminded me of the Daleks.
Oh,
yeah, it's a beehive.
It's a beehive.
Oh, cool.
That or a very, very forward-thinking person from the 1800s.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. All right, and you have some more pictures of the headstones that you've gotten?
No, I think that's it. Did you want to talk about Henrietta?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about Charles Deer and why it was so important to us. And we're actually in the process of trying to put all of the information, the whole story together. We called the county clerk of courts, got the court records, which are not very legible. We have dug through everything that we can. This was, he was murdered by 3 ruffian young boys. He was 41 years old, I believe, at the time. He was walking home at night. We estimated it was about 1:30 in the morning with his wife, his oldest son, Charles, and their baby in a carriage. And she was also pregnant at the time. They were leaving his brother Frank's house for a birthday party. And they had walked, I guessed it was probably about 1.5 miles how far they had walked. And they were literally 2-3 houses from their home. They were getting ready to cross over a ditch, and it was called Seeley's Ditch, which was just basically like a sewage ditch. Yeah. And they were in the process, the city was in the process of lining it, bricking it, and putting a bridge over it. And there was 3 ruffians at the entrance of the ditch in this little tiny piece of wood that they needed to cross. And Charles Deere asked if they would please move out of the way so that Matilda, his wife, and son and baby carriage could get across. Some slurs were exchanged at Charles, and they got into a knock down, drag out kind of fight, a push and shove fight, and Charles was stabbed, I think a total of 3 times. And he died in front of his wife and son and little baby. They had 7 children in total. When you read the story that came out the next day, it talks about the demure, pitiful, tiny wife, Matilda, of Charles Deere, and that she was with child and that she was so grieved, and how well loved Charles Deere was. And he was very well loved. Over, I think it was, they ended up catching the boys, putting them in the jailhouse, and I think it was over 2,000 men appeared. Most of them were stonemasons, because Charles Deere was also a stonemason, at the fairgrounds, and they wanted to lynch the murderers.
Wow.
And they were talked down. They were told, let's not do anything irrational, boys. But really, justice was never served. All 3 boys, some of them, they served a short jail time in jail. 2 of them kind of gloated about what they had done. And they got out of jail and lived normal lives, got married, and had their own families.
Wow.
So is there anything to add to that?
No, and then at some point everyone forgot the story, and his gravesite slowly got covered over the years, and
His story made it into the New York Times. We found it in Canadian newspapers. It was really a sensation. It was a devastating blow to the Dayton community. He was a very, very loved man, and it's just a real shame. Where his house stood is now a parking lot area of Miami Valley Hospital, but you can still see where Seeley's ditch was and the street that it ran off of, and you can see where his brother Franklin, his house used to be. Their son Charles grew up to be a baker, and you can see and find where his little baking shop used to be in South Park of Dayton. And so it's just kind of neat to branch out and see like where they kind of went out. That's my rabbit hole. See, I start following the family. What happened to all of them? Where did they go? What house did they live in? Is the house still there? Can I still go see it? You know, can I get in it?
my rabbit trails follow the maps, because I love maps. So I had to find Seeley's ditch on a map somewhere. I had to find out where this place, where it was, what it was. And that's where I find out that Seeley's ditch, apparently Seeley was an old mayor who had sanctioned the digging of this canal, which was later termed Seeley's Folly and then Seeley's Ditch. Yeah, because it was
a stinky sewage ditch.
It was a nasty little sewage ditch right next to the houses. So, yeah.
So that was his claim to fame.
Yeah. That was my rabbit hole.
All right. What are the requirements? I'm getting a loop here again. What are you looking for when someone brings something to you? What are the requirements? Somebody needing the Grave Hunter Society?
You kind of cover it all. So it just kind of depends on what they are interested in. If they're looking for ancestry, are they wanting a family tree? And, I'm going to need a few names to go by. Let's start with your parents and then your grandparents, and let's see how far back we can go with your knowledge. And then I'll just start plugging away with what I can find. And if it's house ancestry, we just need an address. And we go all the way into, well, he really does. He's a lot better at it. He'll dig into Sanborn maps. And those are so interesting. If they are available and anything that we can find. And we've gone back to maps that date all the way back to, 1790s, looking for homes and areas, plots and lots. That's what we say. If it's, a trinket or an antique that they need researched, we just need to see it, a description of maybe where they think they found it.
Right.
And we'll do our best for them. Photographs, we just need a few names. We've been really good. We've been able to, just with a little bit of detail, find a lot of information on photographs and where they were taken and a good time frame of when they were taken, and this is what it looks like now, and this is what it looked like then.
Right.
Which I think is really fun. I love antique photography. And then with the paranormal, we will do whatever we can. We have a few paranormal actual groups that will go and investigate if that's something that they want. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily jump into the investigation part. We don't want to go in and stir things up more than, what might be going on. But I can tell you that in all the cases that we've had contact us, everybody wants a ghost and not a lot of people end up with them. So we do a lot more reassuring that everything is, the coast is clear. So
Right.
Yeah. As far as requirements go for what we will take on and what we won't, really, we're at this point, we are not for profit. We work on like a value for value type basis. If we give you value, we would hope that you would return that value to us. And in that way, we're not, this isn't our full-time job. And so if someone comes to us and says, hey, I have this thing that I'd like you to look into, but I really need the answer tomorrow. That, as far as that goes is, well, we can see what we can do for you until tomorrow, but,
and we've had that happen, and we've been very successful.
So this is true. But I guess just understanding that things like this take time, and the further back you go, the harder it is to find some of these things that unfortunately disappear forever sometimes. And so there may not be an answer to some questions.
Okay, so if somebody came to you and said, I'm looking for somebody and I need some help. My grandmother she was a Bradford. She was the last in her line from William Bradford. When they came over, they had the family money, his brothers, his kid, his wife, the whole bunch. One of his brothers, it is reported, took all the family money and left for Texas. They don't know if he ever made it, if something happened to him, but I would like to know, I would like to see William's headstone. I would like to know where he's at. Did they send him back to Bradford, England to bury him? Is he here? I would like to know kind of that story. How would you go about would that be more in depth than what you do?
No. That actually sounds like a really fun rabbit hole that I'd like to go down. I would just start with the basics first. I would take all the names that you just gave me, as much of the story as I can have from you. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I would go to is probably find a grave. It's just a really easy type in and look and see what I can find. And it's worldwide. Mm-hmm. And see where that takes me. Set that aside after I'm done with that. Go to Ancestry, kind of go through a little bit of that. And then I would honestly start going through newspapers and archives and looking to see what I can find and start making connections. And you would be surprised what's public knowledge, and what was public knowledge from all the way back then as well. And so it's pretty fascinating what you can find. And really, honestly, like, people get really upset when they read things in the newspaper or they hear things on the news today. But going back into the 1700s, 1800s, and early 1900s, man, newspapers were really descriptive. And sometimes way too far. So you can get a lot of detail.
Too sensational.
Right.
If it bleeds, it leads, right?
And so
Yeah,
you get a lot of
exactly.
information, because not only are they going to talk about what they saw, they're going to ask the neighbors and the neighbors' neighbors and the person that lived behind them. And, so
Well,
you get a lot of information.
I mean, you kind of laid out a step there as far as genealogy. When you get say, like that video you showed a while ago, what are your first steps in going through that? How do you get started on
For a
breaking
video?
that down? Yeah.
I take the address and I start looking on house and home research. You go ahead.
For the video itself, typically what I do is I'll watch it just from beginning to end about 20 or 30 times. And each time I'll be looking at different aspects of it. The first time through, I just want to get an overall impression of what's going on. Second time through, I look for movement within the video, and I typically like to see if movement is consistent amongst all of that. Sometimes you'll get like wind movement, or with the video that we watched earlier, you'll see movement with water. Water has a little bit of weight to it, so you'd want to make sure that the movement of the body of the creature is consistent with the movement of the fluid and how the fluid is moving. Then what I'll actually do is I'll start watching for shadow play to make sure that lighting seems to be consistent. I want to make sure that as light is hitting different subjects, that it's illuminating it consistently. I want to make sure that if there's a reflection of light on things, that it's actually taking some of the color of the different subjects and putting that on different surfaces.
Wow,
the way that normal things interact on video. And then I'll slow it down and I'll start looking at individual like pixel variations. I'll zoom in, I'll zoom out. I'll see if I can, enhance CSI stuff. I'll see if I can enhance different things. One of the biggest things with movements is looking for it. So this is totally non-scientific, but if you kind of let your eyes go blurry looking at a video and you just see as things are moving, you'll see coincidental movement a lot easier. So if something's moving over here and something's moving over here at the same time and the same kind of speed, you'll see it a little bit easier if you're not focusing on the image itself, but just focusing on the movement of the pixels. And so that's where you can really see, hey, this thing over here is moving about the same time and speed as this. They might be the same thing, or one might be a reflection or something like that.
Wow.
And then last of all, if you with some of the older images, it's easier, but you can actually freeze some of the frames of different videos and apply some of the same techniques that you would use for still images to see whether, so there's another technique called error level analysis that's used on still images. So a JPEG is a compressed photo, okay? And so the different compression algorithms mean that if you have 10 pixels in an area and all 10 of them are different colors, the way it compresses it is it goes, okay, here's an average of all 10 of those colors, and I'm going to compress that into a single color. And that way it is how it compresses. And so certain artifacts remain consistent throughout a single way of compressing. But when you have two different images that were compressed differently, layered on top of each other, those show up differently when you use some of these techniques to see, and it'll show edges and things like that wherever.
Like if something's photoshopped.
Yeah, exactly. And these kind of things are not 100% either, but they give a really clear indication of, you can see, oh, hey, somebody edited the titles on that book, or somebody added something in. So,
yeah, that makes sense, because you've seen that before, and you're like, because most of us can see when it has been faked, so, but the really good fake artists out there, you need to do what you're talking about and break it all down and bring it apart so that you can see. I mean, but the thing about the different pixels and all being different, that makes sense to me. I can't explain it as good as you do, but it makes sense to me. All right, what's some of the strange stuff, weird things that you've come across since you've been doing this?
Somebody gifted us a grave marker, like an antique grave marker.
Here, you'll want this.
It's pretty much like that. Thanks, but that was actually really interesting. I know I shared it with you guys on just our private chat, that the location that we ended up finding, the I think it was the patent number and the serial number, and that specific grave marker was actually just old tin grave marker was used in the northern part of Kentucky, and we kind of zeroed it in because of we could barely make out the city on the little tag. It's where the Hatfields and McCoys. It was where the McCoys were buried. So it was just wow, like that was really, they had no clue what they were really giving us. So that was one of the weirdest things. We get strange stuff all the time, or pick up weird stuff. Where people go, here, this is weird. Do you want this? It's yeah, I'll take it.
Well, and your research and your discovery there, what have you come across that's just out there strange?
Our research and our discovery. So one of the first things we ever started researching was we were actually doing a little amateur paranormal investigating back in 2014, and we were in Waynesville, and we were at the Axe Murder House. I know I talked about it early on the show, a few episodes back, and the house is now just an old stucco house. It's not the original house, but it's where the axe murder took place in 1879 on August 20th, and 3 women were murdered by a young man. He bludgeoned and axed them to death, and they were found 5 days later. So that's kind of the background. After the house was cleaned to the best of its ability, they were never really able to keep anybody in the home. They would say that strange smells would, kind of pop up out of nowhere. There would be cold spots, sounds, whisperings, crying. I mean, people only lasted in this old house a year, maybe 2. Yeah. So conveniently, the house burnt down in the 1950s. It burnt down, and they rebuilt on top of the land, just this anathema of a blue stucco house, ranch style, amongst all these old Victorian homes. And nobody would still stay in it. The ground was cursed, they say. So there's a company there that's been there now for 6 years. I'm impressed. Kudos to them. But while we were taking pictures of the house at night, just kind of goofing off, we got a really interesting photograph of this, ectoplasmic thing that's up in the corner. So where did this lead us in our strange research? So we thought, there's the picture of what we photographed. It absolutely has not been altered in any state. We have not enhanced it. Take your best guess at what it is. I researched St. Elmo's fire.
I said smoking.
No, but it was not cold enough to cause steam that was not coming out of the fireplace. If you actually look where the chimney is versus where that's climbing up onto the house.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I remember saying, okay, I'm going to take your picture.
It looks like it's interacting with the downspout.
Yeah. I said, okay, I'm going to take your picture. And that's what I got. So, but going further into researching Waynesville, I was like, I wonder if they because it's kind of a haunted town. There's not a house there that's not haunted. I wonder what else they had going on before this or after this. And we came across some really interesting stories. But my favorite one was there was a doctor that there's one cemetery there. And this doctor decided to exhume bodies in the middle of the night to do research on them. And then he would put them back into the ground about a week later. He would do it at night, unannounced to anybody in the town. He was never sure if he put them in the right grave. And Yeah, so there's people just hodgepodged everywhere in their main cemetery of the older graves. And that was around 1890 or so. And then not too long after that, where Waynesville is located, it's next to what's called Caesar's Creek, which was one of FDR's great plans, which was to turn a creek into a dam. And before that, it used to be an old town. Caesar's Creek was actually a creek and not a lake and dam. And in that lake was found in 1894, I think, at the time, I believe, I don't think it's changed, the world's largest freshwater pearl that Tiffany and Company in New York City actually purchased for a large sum of money, millions today. From this guy that found it. He just kind of fished it out of the creek. So those are two just weird little things that we came across.
Yeah. Oh, cool. All right. Is there anything that you have not been able to figure out? You hit a brick wall and couldn't come up with some kind of definitive answer.
Well, I have one. So I got into this because my family has a treasure story. They have a story about treasure in some faraway Texas town. And they told me all about it. And I have dug and dug and dug and dug as much as I can into this. And
He's done an amazing job.
Dead end. Absolute dead end. I've gone as far as to find digitized copies of every single deed from the county clerk's office.
Wow.
Automate the extraction of the text from that so that it would draw the meets and bounds for each one of these plots on a map. I have over 700 plots drawn on a map. And I can't make heads or tails of anywhere. So
I mean,
Explain.
do you
why.
feel like, do you feel like there actually is a treasure, or you can't prove that there's not? Well, I mean, where are you at with that?
They say to be cautious with family stories because, they are just their stories. I think I have a name and I have documentation that shows that there is a large amount of money, not as much as I was told.
Wow.
But that there was a large amount of money involved in this individual, and that just like the story said, he died under very mysterious circumstances. And that's as far as I can go with absolute surety. I can say there's an individual, and according to county documentation and deeds and things like that, he had a lot of money.
Okay.
But, and this was around the early 1900s where, they didn't have a lot of money in banks. So they had it in the bank of backyard.
Right.
Shoved in the mattress.
Yeah, there could be a possibility, but could be a Walmart built on top of it now. I don't know.
So, but you've basically confirmed with some kind of certainty that there was a lump sum of money hidden, stashed somewhere.
Yes. And where that is, I can't say for sure because I hit the brick wall. And the further away you get from 100 years ago, the harder it is to find, circumstantial evidence and things like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, good luck on that one. I hope there'll be some weird clue pop up when some unknown place, somebody on TV will say something that sparks something, and you'll be off on a new trail.
I just like the validation. If somebody else wants to find it and send me an email, that'd be great.
Well, I'll send my daughter. She lives in Texas. I'll send her to go dig it up, and then she'll split it with you.
All right. Well, that's a better deal than I'll get from anyone else.
That's right. All right, Andrea, have you had something you've come up against?
You answer all your questions. You never have any answers.
I usually go, that's good enough. No, I'm satisfied. No,
okay.
No, not really. I haven't. There's been a couple when I do research for paranormal teams, and I'm trying to get information on it's when it's out of my location and I'm working in another state or another city. Right. Sometimes it can get really frustrating for me. I almost feel like, I understand, like, I'll watch things on Animal Planet and they'll talk about like scent dogs looking for certain things and how they get frustrated if they don't find, the reward at the end. And, I can kind of relate with that. But I sometimes I'll run into dead ends at other cities, but it's usually because I'm taking my research too far and not really stopping where I need to. But I've been pretty successful. I have to, so far, so good. I have been pretty lucky. So,
all right. Before we go on, how much can you talk about the investigation you were in with Darren Huff?
Oh, lots.
Darren Huff was on one of our ghost hunting shows talking about the gadgets and tools. You tell us about how all the invite came about and what it was all about.
So Darren Huff owns and runs GhostHuntingSource.com, and he is the head and lead investigator of Miami Valley Paranormal Services, and a documentarist pair group.
Yeah, documentarians.
There we go. From Cincinnati. They are called Cincy Stories. They worked at the time exclusively with PBS. They contacted Darren and said, we'd love to be able to follow Miami Valley Paranormal Services around and kind of get a day in your life, what it's like to, meet with the people, what you have to do to prepare for an investigation, what you do during an investigation, how you go over the research afterwards, everybody who's intimately involved. And what Cincy Story really does is it gets involved in the individual. So when you watch like Ghost Adventurers or, I don't know, any paranormal show on television, it talks more about the client. Well, what this really got more into was the team.
Why paranormal
what makes us
investigators do what they do.
And Darren contacted us and asked if we would like to be the head researchers for the show. Wow. And we jumped on it. We were like, absolutely. So we met with them, and I think he downloaded some pictures. Did you get any pictures down, Jonathan?
The only one I have is the FLIR.
The FLIR. So I'll post that one in a second. So we met and with our first group meeting, and we were told 2 houses that we needed to research on. No, not yet. I see it though. 2 houses that we needed to research on, and one was in Harmony Township, Ohio, which was literally don't blink or you'll miss it. It was this big, which is really interesting how much information I was able to find, because the town was so small that I felt like it was more necessary to research the ground and the home that was a possibility to be researched. And not only was it one of the first homes built, it was built in 1887. It is now a bookstore called Familiar Books and the Metaphysical. So she's really into that kind of stuff. So we went there, researched, and then another one that we ended up actually going with was called the Dunker House. That's what we chose to call it. We can't really call it what it's commonly known as around here. It is in West Alexandria. I can say that. It was built in 1850s by, I have the name actually, Jon and Anna Markey. And they were of the Dunker religion. And that was something that I learned. I always knew about like Amish and Quakers. Mm-hmm. Dunker was a thing also. And they were big into, they were abolitionists. They did not participate in the Civil War because they did not believe in war, but they participated in the Underground Railroad and harbored a lot of runaway slaves coming through Ohio. Later on, it was transferred into the Habakus family in the early 1900s. One death in all this time occurred. This was my favorite. I mean, the death is sad. His name was Casper Habikas. He died in 1958. He was 86
Casper.
years old. Casper. So if there was a ghost there, it was Casper, the friendly ghost. So I thought that was pretty fun. After we gave them our research at our next meeting, and they filmed us going through the information and also going through some of the new investigative tools. There's a guy named Tim that works on the team, and he builds all of his equipment from scratch.
Jim, I think.
Jim, it is Jim. I apologize if you watch this. It's Jim. And he builds, what did he have?
He had Echo boxes and
Wow.
SLS.
All from scratch.
Yep.
Like just from the bottom up, he built them all. Then we went on location and filmed. Before we went on location, Cincy Stories actually picked John and I, Darren as the lead investigator, and the medium, Michelle, and they went to our house and interviewed us. They were with us for about an hour and a half interviewing, kind of talking like how we're talking now. And then a few days later, we went on location, or I think maybe even that night.
Yeah,
It was pretty quick. We went on location and we were there and did investigating. My hand was touched, and I caught a photograph at that time of an orb, like several in a row, going away from me. We were I came across an casket card, an old casket card, and I read some names off. I read some names that I researched. I know that there was a widow's peak. There's a widow peak on this here. If you want to show the FLIR of the house, this was taken with our FLIR. So if you look at the peak, behind it is actually a higher peak that doesn't quite get it. It's definitely an old mansion. In the widow peak was engraved in there was Isadora Marquis France, born here 1860.
Wow.
She was one of the daughters of the original owners. I read a lot of the names off, and we didn't really get very many responses. You can go ahead and take this one down if you'd like. We didn't get very many responses on the spirit box. What do you think?
Yeah.
No, but we did leave a little early, little ones that we had to come home to, but
Yeah.
it was fun.
We have youngins, so.
It was fun to really be a part of that. And it's always nice when we're able to investigate a location and then be invited along, not necessarily to
Participate,
but just to see the location and say, oh, I know about this, or this person's name that's engraved here, I know who that is. Or
I have a passion for tangible history. That's why I really love researching homes and thinking of the different types of personalities that live there, just the fashions and how that has changed. We're going from Victorian era to today. If you look at women, it's just changed so greatly. Everything, decor, craftsmanship is just not the same anymore. And so we do really enjoy just going and
that's
looking at everything.
So they don't know when that show is going to air yet? I think it was supposed to originally come out in April, right?
It was supposed to come out in April. They have since, Cincy Stories has also joined with, I think, Me TV.
Mm-hmm.
And they are doing kind of a spin-off with it. So I think we've been put on a delay. I'm kind of hoping maybe it's not like you didn't make it through editing, but more wait until October, September, October.
We're not on the cutting room floor, but
that you know of yet.
But there was
what happened.
There was a lot of, obviously there was other people investigating with the team being there, and we did go over evidence at a later date with Cincy Stories there, and you'll have to watch this show to see everything that we caught.
Cool. Well, we'll keep an eye out and hopefully be announcing that when it'll be available. Well, what's next on the horizon for the Grave Hunter Society?
I am currently putting together all the research of the Deer family mainly the murder case mystery,
Right.
and I'd like to put together kind of he's so forgotten, and I'd like to
Right.
put together a little book about him, and then kind of just branch off with some other forgotten stories of people that are in
Cool.
that cemetery that aren't necessarily famous.
Yeah.
But everybody has a story. Not everyone wants to be famous,
Right.
but no one wants to be forgotten. And there are a lot of forgotten people there. And so I want to kind of put together a book of, those people whose family they're also gone. So nobody
Right.
visits them. Nobody thinks of them. I want to bring them back.
Well, that would be awesome. Well, keep us informed of how that goes. All right. How does somebody contact you? They want to use your services.
Andrea
What's the best way?
at thegravehuntersociety.com or Jonathan at thegravehuntersociety.com.
There's your website,
Yep.
thegravehunterssociety.com.
Yes.
Remember, there's 2 S's.
Yes.
That's correct.
When I did the
Yes,
first,
you can also find us on
Yeah.
Facebook and Instagram. I'm pretty active with Instagram, actually. I have had more success with
I think.
reaching out to people
Yeah.
through that. So if you can also contact us on that, and I'm always quick to respond.
I think I put all your contact info on the description on both videos on Facebook and YouTube. If not, I'll go back and put it on there. I was trying to remember to do that, so I think I did. But if it's not on there, I'll go back and correct that now. All right, closing thoughts, Andrea.
Closing thoughts. Thoughts on what we
Just the
do.
show today.
Oh. I don't know. You're blank.
That's unusual.
I know, right? If you have, yeah, I know. There's my thought. Big blank bubble. If you have any research that you want us to do or a story that you want us to find of your ancestors or friends, let us know. We'd be more than happy to work with you. And we're pretty flexible and we're pretty successful. So we definitely live by our motto. Not everyone wants to be famous, but no one wants to be forgotten. So we're here to help bring back people. So.
My final thought is I'm going to take a look at that dragon video again.
There you
and,
go.
If I'm convinced it's real, I'm going to find out where I can get one of them.
So I can have a pet. Another one.
Well, like I said, it's on Facebook. I put the guy's name on there. You can go watch it on here, Shannon Nayad or something like that. But go find the video. The clip is only like 7 seconds long, so that's all that's on Facebook. Anyway, Lynn, any final thoughts?
I think what you do is interesting. It just seems like it would be so cool. I love walking through graveyards and looking at old headstones. I love it. And with my lineage, we go, my mama's daddy's people were Edenfields from Edenfield, England. Bradfords come from Bradford. These things to me it's just interesting how you're able to find, like that there guy. You find him, you literally dig up his headstone, and it just interests me. I'd like to see more of what you do.
Sure thing.
Yeah. We have plenty of stories we can always sit down and tell you, and we can also tell you how to do it. It's not, I don't want to sell ourselves short, but it's not.
It's time consuming, but it's not.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
A lot of work, probably not hard work until you get to places like when my grandmother was researching her family, she'd find something, she'd say, okay, we need to go. She went to Montgomery to look through documents there, and turns out that the place burned right after the documents got there. So then she went to Tallahassee to find the same information, and that one burned right after the documents got there. And she ran into that at about 4 different places.
Wow.
So, stuff like that would give me a headache. I finally would say, you know what, forget this. They don't want me to know, the universe is against me. But I just think that I think it's really cool what y'all do.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, Christine had to leave us. She had something come up. She had to go, but she did. She was just content to sit there and listen today.
I love her.
But we're going to be talking about her books in the next couple months. Do a strange author show on her and her books. But as we close this out today, I'm just going to let everybody know. I was looking for some stuff on my uncle at one point, and Andrea took some basic information, and I was going to show you what she dug up for me. This was my uncle, James Charles Slay. This is a Google Doc that she sent me, and he died in World War II. And this was the information that she sent me. His 128th Infantry Regiment, 32nd Division, the sleeve insignia, his draft card. This is the kind of stuff she found, and where he got wounded in a battle and died later. And she sent me pictures of all of these documents: the application for the headstone marker, the death notice, and the paper, and different things like that. So it was just some useful and unique information that she was able to find on my uncle that gave his life fighting for this country. So
It was an honor to find him. So
well, thank you. It's an honor to be his nephew, even though I never knew him. I knew his brothers. He had two brothers served with him that did not, that lived ripe old ages. And they served, three of them served in World War II. And there was like 8 children. They're down to 2 now. My mom and her younger brother is all that's left of that family. So it's some great information to have. All right, guys, we hate to do it, but we have to come to a close at some point. So here we go. Okay, guys, remember in 2 weeks we will be back, and we're finally going to get into the mysterious booms. The show will be called It's All About the Boom Boom. These sound like sonic booms, but Air Force and all the Air Force and everybody denies that they had any flyovers. Why would they lie about it?
We get them here.
Right. Geologists say there's no tectonic or seismic movement, and we're going to be digging into that in 2 weeks. So join us. Thanks so much for being here. And remember, if you're in our Strange Friends group, give us about 5 or 10 minutes, and we're going to come on and open a room and live chat. So hopefully you can join us there for a few minutes. See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.